Yeah, so welcome everyone to the guided tour through Django CMS and Aldryn Cloud. I'm Angelo, product manager here at Divio and one of the Django CMS core developers. You can also find me under my nickname Final Angel on Twitter, GitHub, or IRC. As mentioned already at the beginning of the presentation by Matteo, if you want to ask questions, please ask them in the chat. So later on at the end of the guided tour, I can go through them and then answer them one by one. Basically, I will showcase the guided tour or the tutorial that we published on djangocms.org. The main goal, again, of the guided tour is to set up Django CMS and implement an example theme based on the how to build a website and blog with Django CMS without knowing Python or Django tutorial that you can find on djangocms.org. And for this, we will set up our project on Aldryn Cloud, so we don't have to do any local messness. We will install and configure the desktop app so we can sync our files down to the desktop and adapt the theme that we are going to download. We're going to get familiar with Django CMS itself, like how page works, how content works, how I can navigate through the toolbar. And ultimately, we'll download and install the clean block theme, which is an open source theme provided by Bootstrap theming platform. And again mentioned, at the end, we'll have a questions and answers where I basically go through the questions asked within the Hangout channel. This will go directly to the live demo. I hope everything will go smoothly as live demos go normally. So I'll close this for now. And we're basically gonna start off with the Divio Aldryn Cloud. So if you're not yet familiar with Divio Aldryn Cloud, you can basically open control.aldryn.com and the login will pop up. You can then sign up if you haven't yet done. We have a really nice sign up step that takes you maybe less than a minute. You could also sign up with GitHub. Once you've done that, you can very easily log in with some user. I've now used just an example user that has basically the same rights and setup that you will have ultimately with the Aldryn Cloud. To get started, what I need to do is here start with a very fresh project. So I basically click on add new project and we'll start from a blank project. You also have the option to start with a theme and content where you have like, if you download WordPress and install something, you can have then a full-fledged demo website ready. This one you should choose. But in our case, we are already pros and we actually would like to modify everything on our own. So in this case, I just create a site like demo from Hangout. I choose the HTML5 boilerplate. Yes, you can also choose another boilerplate to start for, but for now, we're gonna use this one because we want the bare minimum and we also want the CMS installed, of course. Once I hit the create button, it will basically start up my project, set all the settings correctly, and I will then be led through my project start screen. There we go. In this case, we will have a test server and a live server. We will only work on the test server for this tutorial. But in this view, you have different options, for example, to invite other people, to set your domain settings, environment variables, and so on. What we want to do now is install some add-ons. As we don't have now the typical settings pie available to us, we can just simply go through the UI here and search for add-ons. Like, for example, as we're going to use a Bootstrap theme, I want some kind of Bootstrap library where I can work with plugins. Can click on install, leave the settings as it is for now, and just install it. And it's so very easy to actually install things on the CMS. You can also do that for an application, for example, like the Aldryn News and Blog, which we're going to see at the very end. There again, just click install, all is done for you. Go back to the dashboard, and for now we want to actually go to our site so we can add some pages. So you would have to click deploy test, and then it starts deploying that site. While this is now going on, the next step is to somehow get this project to my local computer. For that, I need to download the app, which is available for Windows and Mac. click on it, and then it starts to download, which is basically from there you go. So while this downloads, I have this actually already here, just to check you how it works. This is the app. Once you have it installed, this is how it will show up. Here you can do exactly the same then with the user just created on the cloud. You basically type in your email and then some password and you log in. And then you can see already the project I've created here in the background, which is also called Demo from Hangout, is also available to me from here. And here I also have the status. At the moment it's trying to deploy for a minute already. I have other helpful elements like auto-syncing, which will be soon available to me once the first deployment is done. But in the app itself, I also have logs, like if I create or generate any errors from my local development. I can set templates, which will be available to me in the CMS to select, which we'll also get to. Or you can also always, if I, for example, close this window and click on add-ons here, which will open again this add-on screen for me, that I can then install further add-ons or the same sharing, where I can then set my sharing settings on this project, which is really helpful if you want to invite other people and also get them to collaborate on your project. Good. If you go back to manage, we see it's still deploying. You also have the option here to set your custom settings. So for example, which workspace folder your projects get synced to. So you can set on which path all those projects are added. And you have also some client options that you can set. What's also really nice is you can create projects from in here. As you've seen before, you can really go in here and just start to create another project from this screen. So you don't always have to go then to the admin user interface, basically. This so far from the UI tool. You also have the possibility to do local development. So if you're used to work with Django locally, you can just fire up this and it will then provide a shell for you to work with it locally. You have the command then here on the right, where you can basically execute that in the shell, and then the project is completely drawn to your local computer. In this case, what I'm doing now is I only care about the static files like templates and obviously static files such as JavaScript, CSS, and whatever else I want to make publicly available, which makes it really easy for me then to work on a staging environment. The other path, the Aldryn local development, is basically I copy the entire project, including Python code, including everything that's around it. So it runs then physically locally on your computer. This will still run on the cloud, basically. Good, and what we're gonna do alongside is basically we have this clean block theme, which is available here. We will integrate that clean block theme, which was also used in the tutorial, to integrate into the Django CMS. This is how it looks like. If you go back now to the client here, you can see already, okay, it's green. Actually, our site is ready. It's still doing some scaling, so it scales up the project if we want more servers. In this case, I only want to preview my site. So I open it, make sure that I'm correctly signed in. And then I see already my Django CMS instance. And it asks me at the very beginning for every new install, if I close this, it asks me, hey, add your very first page. I can open the modal here again and say, okay, let's add my very first page. I can double click on this editor, can still go back if I decide on not to do so. I can also go next, but I'm lazy. I like to double click. And then I basically can choose home here with some example content like hello world and save it and create it. And this will create my very, very first page, home with text hello world. Very basics at the moment. But we want to go here. And if we analyze this now, we have like home, about, sample post, and contact. Sample post, we're probably going to replace with block. At the moment here, we only have home. How can I now add more pages? One approach is to hit the create button always here on the top right, which opens this wizard again. So you can basically add a new page. The next one would have been about, and as a pro feature, you can always hit Command Enter or Control Enter, and it will then immediately save it. So we have now created about. You can do that the same for the next page if you want to. Or we can go, let's say, to the pages here. And we can see here the full page tree, what we have at the moment. Here I can also say, hey, I want a new page, and in this case, block, and edit. So we have no block. And the last one we just wanted is contact. Hit again enter, and we have now created 4 pages. We can also see here we have one language at the moment enabled, and home is published. We can see that because of the green icon. You find additional information also in the legend here. Here we are previewing already Django CMS 3.3, which was released last week. To make sure that the other pages are also publicly available, you can basically click on this bottle and say publish. And you can do that for all the other items as well. Basically click on them and then one by one publish them individually. The CMS itself has 2 publishing states. If I go back here to home by pressing on the view icon, and I have here the hello world, it has 2 states. It has the live state, which is this one here. You can identify that by the blue button showing on the top right, which says editing page. If I click on it, I have the draft view, which is not yet published eventually. And you will see that by having another blue button. If I would change something here now, there you go, hit save. And you'll see here now that you have changes in your draft that are not yet published to live. If you would wish to do so, you just basically click on this button and it publishes it then immediately. Those are the 2 states that we have. Good, we have now created home, about, block and contact, and we have some example content available to us. Now, this does not look appealing to me. I want to look at, like, let's use this example content page about me. I want that it looks like that. How do I do that? We have seen that the Aldryn client has, or the desktop app has deployed our changes. We can now click here on Autosync this project. And if I do so, we can see that the client works here. In this case, it was already really fast. You can now open the destination folder, which opens here this page where you can see we have a folder here. You can now open that in, let's say, Sublime. Let's move this to the top right. You can see we have already here some files. I have, for example, this template folder. And if I move this to the right, we do a bit multitasking here now, and this here to the bottom. And if I go in here into the base file while having my site open, I can actually adapt stuff here now. So I can easily go and say here, yay, no FTP. And just hit save. And you see that the client is working here behind. You can see that by the icon, and it's already live. So here you can see I can make changes on my files. I can remove this again. Hit save, editing, and it goes immediately then to the server and does live reload, which is really nice to work, specifically if you work on templates and CSS files. This also goes, of course, for CSS, JavaScript, and any other static files you added here. But what we actually want is, we have this clean block theme and need to download it and need to somehow import it in here. So let's open the theme that we have here and open this folder. So let's put them side by side. Here we have, on the left, we have our current website. That's what's being synced to my local system. And on the right, I have the just downloaded files. I can just open about here, and you see this is now running from my local system, which is basically still this. So we don't need that for now at the moment. Close it and work with that. This includes CSS, fonts, image, JavaScript file. And we know that everything that's served from Django is in the static folder. So if I open the static folder, what I can do now is just drag and drop that stuff to the left side and make sure it's replaced by everything that's in there. And after this, you will see that the desktop app is working. I just copied that over and it's now trying to sync that basically to my system. While that is going on, I also have, now I'm getting a bit confused here. Let's move this out, that to the right side again. If I always lose my progress here, I can still go here, open destination folder. I have it back there. I can go now to my templates folder, and here I also have those templates files. Now I wanted about us. So let's copy about to this folder as well. And you can see already it's also showing up, of course, here, but it's not available there yet. What we want actually is that about is our first page now. For this, base is at the moment, like in the Django world, base.html is the first file it opens. Traditionally, it could also be like the index.html file. You can change that, of course, in the configuration, but in this example, it stays base. So what I can do here now is I can actually delete base, and you'll see that at some point, my page will throw an error that there is no template. It's still syncing though. So let's see if I'm a bit faster. So let's rename this to base now. This is our new base file. You can see that the Aldryn client is still working, so not everything is yet synced. Let's go back to our page and you see, hey, template does not exist. If these errors happen, it can be that the live sync is not working anymore, which obviously I just deleted base HTML file. So I can just reload and you can see base is now showing up. But if I go back to my file, and you can see here already we have something new. We have like the restart bootstrap stuff, and I actually type in something and save, Autosync is not working anymore. This is due to the fact that I have now a complete custom HTML file, not including any CMS anymore. And we want to adapt this now to include the CMS and to behave correctly. Let's revert this change. What do we need for that? That's a good question. First of all, we would need to implement some kind of logic from Django what to load, like those typical tags on the top. And what we need here is specifically static to define our static files, translation, I18N eventually. We have CMS tags, for example, to load the menu. We have these exi tags, which we'll see later on, that are used for loading assets, and additional also menu tags for further menu stuff. After hitting save here, nothing much will happen. We still don't have CSS, we still don't have a nice look and feel. What we actually need to do is now adapt those lines. Here, CSS bootstrap min actually should load now through static / CSS bootstrap min, and here as well, static /. This will technically work if I refresh here, though it's not that nice. What happens if you have a CDN attached to it? So what we do here is make use of one of the Django tags, which is called static. So if I add here static and do exactly the same as I did before, it actually also renders the correct path. So if I hit save here and go back to the site, it still will look the same, but it now serves the correct path. So if I would decide on renaming static to some other folder, it would obviously also do that. We have done that now for the CSS, but we still don't have the image here. So you have to check for JPEG somewhere. There we go. The same here. You can just load static and add that here. And we also have other static files, like on the bottom normally. Here you can see jQuery. Let's make sure that this is also loaded correctly. Or in this case, Bootstrap. You can also make sure that this is loaded correctly, and ultimately also the block. This will make sure that if I go now into the inspect view and network, that I don't actually have any errors here. Good, which makes it nice looking now, but we still don't have live reload because we don't have the toolbar showing on top at the moment. we can now start reintegrating the CMS into the project. And the CMS is really not that intrusive. It doesn't require much to be included. One thing it requires is on the top, the CMS toolbar tag. If I just add that and hit save and reload manually, you can see that this only adds the HTML of the toolbar, which doesn't help me that much. I still need to have the CSS and the JavaScript of it. And for this, we provide Sekisai, where we can say, hey, render all the CSS in my project, and for Aldryn specific tools, also the Aldryn specific head, which can also be HTML or meta tags and so on. And the same we have to do then on the footer. Like if I hit save now and refresh again, you can see the toolbar is here, it's styled, but I can't actually open and close it. So I still need to make sure that the JavaScript is somehow rendered. For this, the same here, we can define render block.js. And on the other hand, what we also need is the snake equivalent, which is render tail. You can also define your own blocks if you want, so like JS footer, JS top, but these are the tags that are required by the CMS. If I refresh now, the toolbar is back on, which is really nice. But we have a little bit of a problem. You can see if I open it, I don't see the menu anymore, which is not that optimal. I actually would like to navigate while the menu is open. For this, we also created a really nice blog post about best like front-end development with Django CMS on best practices. And one of those best practices is, for example, to modify your CSS if there's a sticky header with something like this. So if the toolbar is available, push my content 45 pixel down. So if I open it now, after a refresh, of course, I have to see. Now I have an error here. I added it correctly, I think. So we have some custom code there, which doesn't, we don't have yet the right code. But then technically if I open it, yeah, now it works. There you go. If you open it, the menu jumps to the bottom. If you close it, again to the top, which is a clean solution then to still navigate your website, obviously. But we actually cannot navigate it yet because it's still static HTML, which leads to post HTML file, which doesn't help me. So I have to figure out, hey, where is the navigation? Let's make this a bit closer or more wide. So you can see here is our navigation. This has to be generated now dynamically by Django CMS. How can we do this? We have this show menu tag in CMS, which is written like this. So you can say show menu. Then you can define 3 values, which are sometimes confusing or can be confusing. And if we check out the documentation on those, you can see that the first 2 parameters define the start level and the end level. So if you would like to start from the first level nested system, you could add from here, go from 1 to 50. Or if you only would like to have the first level rendered, you would do something like this. And if I go back here now into my site, you can see after a quick reload that it's not correct. I have home, about, blog, and contact, which I just added. So if I click on about, you also can see that the URL is appropriately handled now. I could of course also add more if I would like to. So I have now the menu working. Now we can start on the more detailed things, like for example, the title. That should also be dynamic. And in CMS we have something like request.site.name, which renders the same that you can see here at the moment. Demo from Hangout. And you can see on top here, demo from Hangout is rendered. This would go the same as here. Start Bootstrap. I would like to have the name of my website, like request.site.name. And then Start Bootstrap will change to demo from Hangout. But I would like to have a bit better name. So I can go to my administration, go to sites here and change it here. So I can easily go in here and now say, for example, shop.com. Save. Then you can see title here, and title here have been adapted, which is really nice. But for SEO reasons, I would like also to, like, you know, do something like that, home, dash, whatever. And for this you can access the page attributes. So if I go to edit this page, let's go, for example, to home. Make this more and then go to page and page settings. I have those attributes like title, menu title, page title, description, meta tag. And I could actually use them. Like I could write here welcome on the page title and render that here. And for this, we use something that's called, I have to look for that quickly. I think it's called page name, page attribute, I think. So something like page attribute. And then the name, for example, page underscore title. So if I hit save here, I was a bit too fast, so go advanced settings again and say here, basic settings of course, say here welcome, hit save. I'd see welcome on top here now. Or I can also just use the title that we had before there. Switch back and it goes to home. To go even further, I can go back here and say page attribute, and in this case it was meta description. So I can just add my meta description here. And this is extendable, this system. So you can add more attributes to your page and, for example, then also render the author if you wish so. That's one example of how we can make things more accessible. Now, the nice thing and the title is I can wrap this in a block like this and then override it on a template basis. So like my base template defines this block title, but if I would have any other template, like let's say this content template extends from base, so I can now go in here and say block title and override it here. That can also then happen on like your own custom add-ons that you're writing. So here I could then say hello world, and I would override the default directly in this page, and you'd see on top hello world. But of course we don't want that in this case, because I want to use the global one defined in base. Another one that you can do here is the language code. You could here write language code, and then it would add the correct code on top of your markup, which can also be really helpful if you have multi-site pages. Let's check the code of the remaining site. What do we have here? If you, for example, toggle navigation, if you'd wish to translate this, you could write trans and then toggle navigation, which would still work fine. And this we'll see later on how to do the header. This is basically this part here. So what we've done now is we have a logo that can be defined. We have a working menu. The header will show later on, but we cannot add content yet. Like this is the example content that I would like to override, which is rendered here. As you've seen, this template basically, if I make this quickly, this site uses templates, the content template. We have seen this already in here, basically. You can define default templates that are accessible from the CMS through this template section. Now, I've defined content, which means when the CMS loads, the first page it actually loads is not base, but content. And if I would remove everything in here and just write again, hello world, this page would look significantly different. Because what this template does is, again, it extends base HTML file and it loads CMS tags, which is, if I only do that, not too much. You can see our page still looks almost similar. Basically extends what we have there. But what I can define now is here a block content with a placeholder. And in my base file, in this area, I can then also write block content. And then the CMS will take this content and render something differently now. So it now has here an empty place. I could say, hey, here is nothing. And this will still not show up because it will actually go to the content template. Probably have a typo. Check. So we have block content. Good, there we go. And then we have to make sure, of course, that the content template is selected. Let's see what's happening here. Here we have another one. Let's save that quickly. Probably isn't saved yet or synced. There we go. Hello world changes. We have something else now here. This comes from the template or from the creation page that we did at the beginning. So if I go on top here, I can now add actually content. If I go back to the About Us page here we have this default text now saying, hey, this page has no content yet, make sure you're in edit mode, blah, blah, blah. And this is the placeholder system that we have in here. If you go into structure, here is where you add your content. If you go back to home, we have here something already. We have here the content hello world example. If I would simply delete this one, we would see the example text again here. This page has no content yet. Make sure you're in edit mode. And how this works is basically you have this placeholder system, which looks like that if you have it simplified, like placeholder content. And what that does is it allows us to define areas in the CMS that can be where we can add content. I can also define something else, like I could add a feature here. And then after a quick refresh, you can see here feature shows up now. And the nice thing is you can add plugins to it, like click on the plus here and then search for like something like text and then say hello world again and hit save. It's added there. You can see it's shown here. Doesn't matter in this case if it's now in feature or content, it will just define the ordering basically. But it can be that features, for example, this area here on top, which we'll go to quickly. For this case, we only need content, and what's nice in the placeholder system is we can define placeholder content or. So if there is no add-on, show me this content, otherwise show me what's added to the placeholder. Now I've just removed the feature one, but the feature holded the plugin for me, so I can go back, feature, go back in here, and my plugin is still there. Just drag and drop it there and delete it again. So it still have my hello world content, but actually I would like to have this content, just that the template looks like exactly as I had. And here I can simply go over the text, double click, you can edit content, insert it basically, hit save, and now our page looks almost identical to the clean block one here. The only thing that we haven't covered yet is the about me. And if I go back to this page, we have it defined here. I could now use, for example, the page attribute system again and say, hey, I want here the page title rendered, for example, which technically would work. I could just go into the page title, add custom page title for every page that I have here, and it's rendered then like that. Could also do the same here, for example, write my own custom field. But I could also use something entirely different, like what we just had here with the placeholder system. I could say, hey, okay, I want to use the title. Let's remove this for now, but also define a placeholder. So I can say placeholder feature or render this. And here, and placeholder. This allows me now to have still my header as it is here, but override it if I want. So I can go in here and now override this with, let's say, another text. And because I love the wording so much, I call it again hello world. And this will add now the hello world on the top, but you'll see we lose all those content areas. As we have seen with Aldryn itself, it's really easy to go back in there and install new add-ons. So I can easily go in here and say, I want to install a background image add-on, for example. Or a style plugin. And we'll see why we need them quickly afterwards. In the style one, I would need, for example, container page heading class. And then while I'm working on my page, I can still deploy alongside. So I deploy my changes here. It will explain to you now what we are about to do. If we check out the structure here, I can build complete structures in the structure board, and you can also nest elements. So for example, I can have a row, which is like this grid system, and I can define I want one column with, let's say, MD12. Add this column, and you see I have no nested plugins. I can drag and drop then the text here. Doesn't do much there yet. But what we need is we need to basically build now this header separately. So we need something with a class intro header, or just this background plugin that I just about to install. After that, I need a container class or a container div. I need a row. I need a column. And then I need this page heading class. And then I need a heading or this text plugin. You can see now, this is like also a representation of the markup I just have here on top. And I somehow need to rebuild that. You can see I just had the row and the column plugin. Column here, and the column plugin, if I move this to the left, has specific attributes like call LG8. So I can easily go here, say call LG8. What else does it have? LG offset 2, here the offset. It has medium 10 and offset 1. So I can save that, which makes clear that I have now the row, the column, and the text plugin. Text plugin itself shows hello world at the moment, but I can change it like, yay, we got it. Make this as a heading, because here as well it's a H1. Hit save, which makes sure that we have those three, but we're still missing intro, container, and page heading, and that's what I just added basically. If I go back here and I go back to manage add-ons and I check the style plugin, for example, I can still go in there and configure. And what the style plugin does is it provides me a list with classes. Like I need, for this case, container and page heading, but not intro header, because for this we're going to use the background. But if you have custom classes or so, you can extend it with more ones, like I did once here with this. Hit save and redeploy. And this is the power then of having a lot of different add-ons in here. And you can see I still edited stuff, and the Aldryn tells me, hey, I'm ready. So I go back and say, yeah, okay, let's check that out. So I need a background. Probably need to refresh first. There you go. And then let's look if background, there's the background image. Can now open the background image and actually add a file. So let's go back to our project here. Quickly open the destination folder again. And in here, we should have some image files in static images. We have, for example, let's choose a nice image like this one. Yes, I can now drag and drop that over here. That's how easy you can add files. Then define, hey, it's a header type. And our custom class that we have here, intro header, in additional classes. And now I added a background image. I can easily drag and drop that also into the one. So now we have covered the intro header. Now what we need is the container. So I can go into the background image directly because it comes afterwards. Click on the plus here, search for style, and create a container class. Hit save. And if you open it again, nest it further. And the last thing we need is, after the column, we need the page heading class. There you go. hit save and upload it. Here again, nest it further, and you can see I just built the structure I had here in there, and let's see how it looks like. We now built the entire background image and text with plugins. So it's very powerful. You can really create very nested structures in the CMS that represent basically HTML markup text. The last thing I would like to show is, like, we also installed this block application, but how do I install it? You can do this by going to Page and then Advanced Settings. And in the Advanced Settings, go to Application and then just choose the application you want to install. In my case, Newsblock. Hit Save. And it's there. I have nothing in there yet. So let's go to the typical creation thing. Let's publish this page first. Click on Create. And now you have a new entry called Newsblock article. So you can actually start now by adding a blog post with the typical hello world. And there you go. I just created a blog post with very basic, simple markup. You can easily now go into your application then and modify those templates here. Yeah, that basically concludes the first part where we showed you how to set up the project with the Aldryn Cloud, install the desktop app, getting familiar with the Django CMS, and installing that clean block theme, starting on. So this concludes the guided tour. You'll find all mentioned links and resources within the description of this video. If you have any feedback or question, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share for more videos on our channel. Till next time, bye!